Hello friends, Adam here with FED. Today we're going to be doing a tier list, obviously, because you see the screen and you saw the title of the video, so you know what we're doing. But we're tier listing all the Fire Emblem games and some of the spin-offs based on how easy or hard they are to Ironman. And Ironman essentially just means no resetting, so if a character dies, they're dead forever. It's kind of just basically what it means, but there's other things that go into it as well, but that's the general thing about it. This video idea, this tier list idea, was suggested to me in the Discord. Whenever I do a tier list video, I ask for suggestions from the Discord and I take one of those ideas, and this one was actually a pretty common one from 3 or 4 different people, I think. So here we are, let's do it. So FE1 is pretty easy to Ironman. FE1 just has so many recruitable units that if you lose someone, it's not that big a deal. And not only that, stat caps are so low that even if your units are, even if you have like a weaker unit at base, they're probably still somewhat usable, as long as they have a decent enough weapon level, which a lot of characters. I'm trying to think. I feel like a lot of characters in the late game come with decent weapon levels. I could be wrong though. But yeah, I think it's a pretty simple game to Ironman. The only thing that would make it any harder is that enemies pretty much always have a chance to hit you with a critical attack if they do hit you, which is really frustrating to deal with. But it's not that big a deal. I think it's totally workable. And Marth is really strong, so he's probably not going to die unless you really mess up. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. Pretty good one to start with, honestly. Especially since it's on the Switch. It's easy to get your hands on now. All right, FE2, Gaiden, Fire Emblem Gaiden. I think it's pretty easy. Gaiden's gameplay itself isn't super difficult. There's some frustrating things to deal with, like the summoners and the moguls that split into more enemies and stuff. That's annoying. But if you're Ironmanning it, I'm assuming it's not your first playthrough, so you probably have some idea of how to deal with that. So Gaiden, I think, is pretty easy. The only thing that keeps it from being an easy tier is that just the number of recruitable units is pretty low. So if someone dies, it's going to be frustrating, and you're going to lose out on an important part of your army, most likely. There's not a whole lot of replacement, is what I'm saying. So that's pretty easy. All right, new mystery. Oh, sorry, not new mystery. I always want to call it new mystery because of what the new game's called. Mystery of the Emblem, FE3, I think is also easy. Book 1 and Book 2, I think is pretty easy, just because of the amount of recruitable characters. There's a ton. That's, you know, I kind of see that as a theme here. When there's a lot of recruitable characters, it makes it a little easier. And when stat caps again are low, they're about 20. I think they're all 20 in FE3. That also helps. FE4, this one I had a hard time deciding where to put it. Genealogy of the Holy War. The number of recruitable units is really low, and losing someone can be really punishing. But the game itself isn't that difficult, and you also get like a total reset halfway through the game, where any unit that died, it doesn't really matter because you're essentially just get a new army. So it's hard to say whether or not it's hard to Ironman or not. And if you're just trying to finish the game, not necessarily not lose units. I mean, the main character of both parts is the best unit. You know, the chance of them dying is really low unless you are really reckless and put them in a group of a bazillion enemies. They should be fine. So I considered putting it into hard but fun, but I'm going to leave it in pretty easy. Alright, Fire Emblem Thracia 776 is definitely a hard but fun one for me. Thracia 776 is a difficult game. It is. And, you know, people who've played it tend to tell other people it's not that bad if you know what you're doing, but the thing is, not everyone knows what they're doing entirely. There are just a few checks that are really important for you to be able to make. So I feel like there's a few chapters in particular that have some pretty hardcore like staff rank checks. You really want to have some restores on you. Really want to have warp, rescue, silence. It can be really useful in the last couple chapters of the game. So I think it's hard, but generally it's going to be fun because if you lose a unit, it's not like the end of the world. Alright, next we have Tiering Saga, which isn't actually a Fire Emblem game by name, but it's made by the guy who made Fire Emblem, essentially, or the guy who's credited with making the story and the scenarios for Fire Emblems 1 through 5, after he left Intelligent Systems. So it's Fire Emblem in everything but name. I think originally it was going to be called Emblem Saga, and then he got like yelled at by Nintendo. But yeah, it's easy. It's another easy one. It's like Gaiden, where there's like infinite experience for kind of like half the party. There's infinite experience. You have to play it to really understand. And I don't really want to spoil it because it's a fun game and not very many people have played it. But you get a lot of recruitable units and a lot of really strong units. So I think it's a relatively easy time. I'm going to put it into pretty easy just because I just had a few chapters come to mind that are rough if you're not ready for them. But again, I'm assuming this isn't your first playthrough, so you're probably going to be ready for them. Pretty easy is good enough for me. Alright. The Binding Blade. FE6. Also, pretty easy. Pretty easy. You get a ton of units. The only difficult thing with the Binding Blade is the hit rates are shaky, especially in the early game, and that's frustrating. So you might just miss an attack that you need to hit at like an 80% or something, just because that's as high as you could get, because Binding Blade's ridiculous with hit rates. So I think it's pretty easy overall just because of all the replacement units you end up getting, but it's not the easiest by any stretch of the imagination by any means. Alright, FE7, definitely going into easy. Easy to Ironman. Your main characters, aside from Lyn, but I would just say don't deploy Lyn if you can avoid it, are competent enough to not get you into too much trouble, especially Hector. He's probably not going to die. His defense is really good. I mean, he's just not comfortable against mages and their ilk, or whatever he says, that one funny line. I think it's a pretty good place to start for an Iron Man, though, just like it is a good place to start for the series, you know. There's a decent amount of units you get throughout the playthrough. Alright, Sacred Stones. Sacred Stones, very similar to Gaiden, in that there are things like unlimited experience and everything, but I don't like there's not as large a cast as there is in like the Binding Blade or FE1 or FE3. So I have a hard time putting it in easy, just because like a death could be really punishing. And I don't know, but and Erica's not like super bulky, but like Ephraim is really bulky. I don't know. So if either of them die, you lose, but Ephraim's pretty good. So, and you could just not use Erica. You can just go Ephraim route. And Seth is really good. Kind of breaks the game for you. So yeah, it's pretty easy. All right, Path of Radiance. I'm gonna put into easy, considering that there's a lot of recruitable characters in the end game, close to end game, like the last like 5 chapters, or maybe was it last 5 or 6 chapters. You get a lot of really good units that are end game ready essentially. You know, you get Joffrey, you get Soren, Bastion, Ina or Nasir. You get plenty of units that can help carry you through to the end. So I think it's even if you lose some majorly good characters, you get replacements that are fairly good. So, yep. Berwick Saga. So, full disclosure, I haven't finished Berwick Saga yet, but from my understanding, I imagine it'd be pretty hard. I'm gonna say it'd be, but I think I'm gonna say hard on fun for this one actually. I enjoy Berwick Saga. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a fun game, but not being able to use those every 5 turn saves would be frustrating, because I can't tell you how many times because hit rates are just so shaky for most of the game, and having being able to save every 5 turns just makes it bearable for me. Just enough to where I don't feel like I'm using save states necessarily, but I'm definitely not having to reset an entire chapter, because I hate resetting entire chapters. It's the worst. And also, just you don't get very many units, right? You don't get very many, so them dying is annoying. And there's also some weird like recruitment requirements where there's certain units, if they die, you just won't get other ones that are really, really good. So and you're forced to train those units. So it's not like you can just avoid using them in combat or anything. You have to train this unit to recruit this other unit that's like one of the best in the game, kind of thing. So death is really punishing in Berwick Saga, from my experience, in that way. Okay. Radiant Dawn, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, I think is definitely hard on fun for Ironmaning. Radiant Dawn's one of my favorite games in the series, but it is really it's a rough Ironman, especially considering the first like 4 chapters. Is it 4? Yeah. Prologue, chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, right? Maybe not chapter 3 actually. I can't remember chapter 3 if you lose no matter what, if people die. But yeah, so the first few chapters of Radiant Dawn, even if not a main character dies, you have to reset. So just like anyone dies, you have to reset. It's like it's a game over. So that's annoying. I'm not a fan of that. And then just like having the split armies, part 2, losing anyone could be kind of rough. I mean, as long as you don't lose Har, you can beat endgame pretty easily. Part 2 endgame, I should say. But chapters in the middle of that can be rough. And then like you got another hard barrier in part 2, chapter 1, where it's just 2 units, and they honestly just, it really just comes down to Braum is like okay, and Nephany has a really heavy weapon, so she doesn't double anything. If she had like just a normal steel lance instead of a steel great lance, she'd be a lot better in that chapter and would perform well. But as it stands, as it's made, she just doesn't do as well as she could. So I think it's a pretty unfun Iron Man, just because of the there's just like a bunch of random roadblocks like that chapter, or part 1, chapter 9, where it's just Micaiah and the Black Knight. Like that's just not fun to me. All right, Shadow Dragon is literally the game to Iron Man. Literally the game to Iron Man. You just like, if you lose too many units, the game says, oh, you lost a bunch of units, and gives you new units. Like, you'll get, like, they're faceless, but they give them a name and they have stats. They're usable. So it's like, yes, this is like, it's designed to be Iron Man. So yeah, I think it's pretty good one to go for. New Mystery of the Emblem. I think I'm gonna go. I could see it going into hard but fun, just because of the prologue. Prologue can be pretty rough, and if you're playing on a higher difficulty, the prologue is actually super hard. But it's quick. It's quick to play through if you know what you're doing. And again, this isn't your first playthrough, most likely, for Iron Manning, so you probably know what you're doing. But I'm gonna put it into like pretty easy. I think pretty easy. Yeah, that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. You get some strong units, but there's also some really messed up enemy things to deal with that I don't like messing around with. So we're gonna say pretty easy for that one. All right, Awakening. Awakening is a hard one, just because I think the game isn't that hard necessarily. Unless you're playing like Lunatic or Lunatic Plus, which, why are you playing those difficulties? Those aren't fun for anyone. But the lack of recruitable characters is frustrating. So I'm gonna put Awakening into hard unfun. I think I wouldn't want to Iron Man this one. Just the penalty for death is pretty high if you lose like a parent to a child character. Sorry if you hear a little bit of crying. I'm not gonna cut it out because I don't feel like it. But that's just little FED. Anyways, it's getting close to nap time, I think. But yeah, Awakening is not my favorite Iron Man in the world, to be honest. Fun game. I like Awakening. Don't get me wrong. I think Awakening is great. Not a great Iron Man. Birthright. Fire Emblem Birthright. Fate's Birthright. I'm gonna put this one in hard but fun, and it only goes that high just because you don't get to recruit very many characters past like chapter 13. There's like 2, or is it 3? There's not very many. Past chapter 13, there's like no one to recruit, and that's bad. So death is just really punishing. You're not gonna get replacement units, but there's endless grinding in Birthright, so you can. I guess that's true for Awakening as well. I'm gonna put Awakening. We'll put it there. But Birthright and Awakening, for the same reasons. Unlimited experience, but penalty for death is like pretty steep, and you are going to face enemies that are kind of scary. So yeah, we'll do that. Conquest, again, I think similar to Thracia, except actually not similar to Thracia at all. Hard but fun. Hard but fun. You do get some later units, like you don't get you get Xander in what is it, like chapter 16? Is that when you get Xander? And he's really great. Just appears then. Shura you get around chapter 16 or 17, and he's pretty good. So there's that. And I guess for all three of these games, there's the child characters that you could technically, I guess, recruit later. So there's that too. Right, Revelation I think is pretty easy, honestly. A lot of characters, a lot of units, and then just you can grind whatever. Echoes, basically the exact same reasons as Gaiden, as I said earlier. Not very many recruitable units, but the game itself has endless grinding, is not that difficult, so we'll do that. And when I say endless grinding, it's literally endless, and it's not that difficult. It's not like you're not running the risk of letting units die with this endless grinding, most likely, you know? So I think it's a pretty easy experience. All right, 3 houses. I think we all know what I'm going to say here. Hard on fun. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. You can't recruit any new units past the halfway point of the game. What kind of BS is that, man? If someone dies in the early game, you're screwed. And especially if you consider maddening. I mean, if you factor in Divine Pulse, I guess it goes down to like hard fun or maybe even pretty easy. But without Divine Pulse, it's garbage and I hate it. So hard on fun. I'm still going to beat it someday. All right. Heroes. I mean, I imagine it's pretty easy, right? I mean, as long as you can just keep, especially if you're willing to put money into it, right? You just keep buying orbs and keep summoning new heroes. So super easy, right? All right, and warriors. I'm gonna put warriors into like hard on fun because you don't get you get like no units at all, and permadeath in a warriors game just doesn't work. Anyways, thanks for watching, friends. Make sure to like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will catch you next time.